Hi, I'm Kim Rayner, and I want to welcome you to episode 20 of All About Spirits, Life After Cancer. And today's episode is called, Do You Recognize What Spirit is Trying to Tell You Through Your Body? And when we're diagnosed with cancer, it impacts every part of our experience, from our relationships with ourselves and other people, to our career and our spirituality, all the way down to our sex life. So every Monday at 10 o'clock Central Time, I produce this show called All About Spirits, Life After Cancer, and it's to help people walk through the process of life after cancer, to help transition into what is going to rapidly become a new life for yourself. And like I said, today's episode is, do you recognize what spirit is trying to tell you through your body? And this episode is based on the work, or the teachings in this episode really, are based on the work by a woman named Louise Hay. And Louise Hay is an author of a book called You Can Heal Your Body, and also another book called Heal Your Body, Heal Your Life. And she's the founder of the Hay House, who people in spiritual practice are probably familiar with in one way or another. And, a little bit about her, she was raped when she was 5 years old, and she was a battered child for most of her life. And she became a teaching healer as a result of her life experience. And at some point, she was diagnosed with vaginal cancer and needed to put into practice the things that she was teaching other people to do in order to save her life. And when she was diagnosed, she had a conversation with her medical providers and said that she wanted to try and heal herself using the practices that she was teaching. And they said, okay, this could be detrimental, but we'll give you, 3 months and come back and we'll take a look at where you're at. And at the end of 6 months, she actually had cured herself of her vaginal cancer. And the way that she did that was by changing beliefs and ideas and stories that she had, emotional patterns that she had accumulated throughout her life, and found a way to heal herself. So I was introduced to Louise Hay in about 1987, and I was introduced because I had a history of warts on my skin, and somebody told me, "Oh, you should check into this lady named Louise Hay. She's got some pretty cool teachings about things." And at that time, I was a pretty angry person, and most of the people who knew me knew that I was pretty angry. So I looked up Louise Hay's information, and the way it works is, she believes that there is, for every physical manifestation or ailment that we get, there is an emotional pattern that is behind it, that has somehow landed in our body, manifested, and became real. So when I started looking up warts, the emotional pattern behind the physical manifestation of warts was little expressions of hate and belief in ugliness in the world. And that was certainly true to some extent for me and how I had lived my life and based on my experiences. And, some of you know that I was gang raped when I was 12 years old. And so I certainly had a perspective of life that it was ugly, and that I had some hatred for the people in my life. And as I grew older, I can trace this thread of little messages that my body was trying to give me throughout the years. I can trace it through my history. I started having female problems really early in my life. And after I looked up the information about warts, I started looking up the information about other things that were going on in my life. And when I looked up information about female problems, it meant that there was a denial of self, and that I was somehow rejecting my femininity and just rejecting the feminine principle as a whole. And that all came about after I had been raped. And, there's this idea of rejecting femininity. Somewhere in my life, I decided that my parents would have preferred to have boys instead of girls. And whether that's the truth or not is neither here nor there. That was the belief that I adopted in my life. So the idea that I was somehow rejecting the principle of femininity really felt true to me. And when I started looking around at Louise Hay, for every physical manifestation that she identifies, or emotional pattern that she identifies, she also provides a healing tool and an affirmation to use to help release that pattern. And I was really interested in looking at the problem, but not so much at playing around in the affirmations and stuff. I would read them and I would study them a little bit, but I didn't commit much time to the actual healing process. So as I got older, I started to have menstrual problems, and they became more and more severe as I got older and older. And menstrual problems, according to Louise Hay, is a rejection of femininity. Go figure. It is also a manifestation of guilt and fear, and it is also somehow a belief that the genitals are sinful and dirty. And part of the things about my rape story is I kept that a secret until I was 36 years old. I didn't tell anybody about that for 24 years. That was certainly a big secret, and I did believe that everything that had to do with sex was in some way dirty, just because of my personal experience with it. And as I got older, I continued on in my life, and I developed endometriosis. And I had the surgery 3 different times for endometriosis. And when I looked in Louise Hay's information about endometriosis, it talked about insecurity and disappointment and frustration and, replacing self-love with sugar and being a blamer of other people. And when I looked around my life at that point, that was certainly what was going on for me. I was insecure by that point. I was married, and I was always afraid that my husband was going to leave, and I was frustrated with where my life was going, and I had an absolute problem with food and lots of other things that I've run into problems with. So the endometriosis was a manifestation of those symbols, these emotional patterns that I had too. And I continued on my way. I poked around. I did some therapy, but I really didn't do a lot to heal what was going on for me. I ended up with fibroids, and fibroids are nursing a hurt, and it is a blow to the feminine ego. And the fibroids happened at about the time that my husband and I got divorced. So there was this way that, in the beginning when I started playing with Louise Hay and learning about her literature, I sort of did it half-heartedly. I did the affirmations. They were kind of fun. It was mostly a tool that I could look at and go, oh, wow, cool. I could recognize some of the patterns, and I really did do the work on the really easy stuff. When I'd get a sore throat, I'd look at that and go, oh yeah, there are things. I am stuffing angry words. There is something I need to tell somebody that I don't know how to tell them. I'm not able to express it. So I putzed around and I played around. But when I got ovarian cancer, that turned it into a whole different ballgame for me. Ovaries are the point of creation and creativity. And I really did believe, like I said, in some way that my parents would have preferred that I would have been born a boy instead of a girl. And cancer is deep hurts. It is long-standing resentments. It's deep secrets. It's grief eating away at the self. It's carrying hatreds. It's developing the attitude of what's the use anyways. So when I got cancer, the magnitude of this work became so important to me, and I started doing this work with a vengeance. I started studying the affirmations and doing the healing work that she talked about. And she talked a lot about finding a way to heal what's going on, to find a way to deal with this stuff. And I started doing the work, and the work of Louise Hay is one of the tools that I used. And, so now when I hear somebody talking about an illness, I know in my heart of hearts that somewhere along the line there's an emotional pattern that is helping to manifest or feed that illness. And I also know beyond the shadow of a doubt, if you are willing to do the work, and I mean the mental work, the releasing of the patterns, the giving up the stories, the learning how to forgive, that nearly anything can be healed. And I know that because of my own experience. And when I talk about the work that I'm talking about, this isn't designed to heal you or cure you or turn your life around on a dime. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to awaken something inside of you that's going to cause you to want to contribute to your own healing process. It is an invitation to shift your mental attitude, to shift yourself and your life, and to recognize somewhere along the lines that we are connected to spirit. When we can get our mind and our body and our spirit in alignment, there's a way that we can rejoice in living no matter what's going on. And, your doctors can do so much. But unless you are willing, or I'm willing, or we're willing to take part in our own process, they can only really do so much. So this work, all of this work, Louise Hay's work, the work with the stones that I talked about last week, and whatever work is coming up next in the next issue that I do, it's about helping you start ways to make changes, to start to recognize that you have influence over what you do in your life. You have influence over your healing process. And when you can align your body, when you can align your mind, when you can align your spirit, it is amazing what God can create, what spirit can create. And, I want to tell you that the smallest start makes a difference. So my invitation to you this week is to look at Louise Hay. Her little blue book is called Heal Your Body, or Heal Your Body, Heal Your Life, either one of those. And the last thing that I want to tell you is the hardest people to recognize this stuff in is ourself. And I was no exception to that. I needed to have people in my life who were willing to talk with me and play with me and have conversations with me about this stuff. So, I invite you to step into your life, to fully step into your life and start looking at what the thoughts and ideas are and what are the physical manifestations. And let me tell you, you don't have to wait until something like cancer to start playing with this stuff. If you don't have cancer, if you don't have anything major going on, I invite you to start looking around at the little things that you do get. Chronic earaches, skin rashes, headaches, migraines, sinus problems, they all mean something. So start looking at that kind of stuff and really start paying attention to it. If you need help in trying to figure out what something means, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. And my invitation to you today is, if this information was helpful for you, I invite you to like it and share it on Facebook. It'll help make the information available to other people. It'll help me in my process and in my work. And until we actually have a chance to talk, I hope that life treats you well, and I invite you to go out and make it a great week. Thank you so much.